The Boston Celtics entered the summer of 2007 unrecognizable to generations of basketball fans who once knew the team as the NBA's Mean Green Machine. The most successful franchise in league history was coming off a 58-loss season and back-to-back trips to the lottery. The then 16-time champions also hadn't made an NBA Finals in 2 decades. By the end of July, however, Executive Director of Basketball Operations Danny Ainge had pulled off 2 blockbuster trades for 2 future Hall of Famers to partner with the team's homegrown star, thereby resurrecting the concept of a star-studded Big Three that first gained popularity when Boston teams of a bygone era clashed with the Lakers in the 80s. Just like that, the Celtics and Big Threes were back, and NBA team building would never be the same. Though Boston finished 29th in the overall standings during the 2006-2007 season, the Celtics still had big plans and a grand vision for the offseason. For one, they had Paul Pierce, a 5-time All-Star still in his prime. Pierce was coming off an injury-riddled season, but the captain and the truth was locked up long-term. The Celtics hadn't won a playoff series in 4 years, but the front office knew Pierce could still be an integral part of a winner. In addition, with bad luck on their side at the 2007 draft lottery, which essentially served as the Greg Oden and Kevin Durant sweepstakes, the Celtics had less reason to go all in on a youth movement. They also had the assets to jump in the trade market for a disgruntled star, boasting the number 5 pick in the draft, youngsters like Al Jefferson, Gerald Green, and Sebastian Telfair, plus decent-sized contracts like that of Wally Szczerbiak's. The number 1 target was Kevin Garnett, who had spent 12 years in Minnesota being loyal to a fault to the Timberwolves. By the summer of 2007, the former MVP was a 10-time All-Star, 8-time All-NBA selection, 8-time All-Defensive Team member, and had already twice signed 2 of the biggest contracts in league history. But the 31-year-old also hadn't tasted postseason basketball in 3 years and had only advanced past the first round once. Building the case that Garnett should force his way out of Minnesota was easy, to everyone except the man himself.
What's driving you? You play hard, you always play hard.
I'm losing. I'm losing.
Though his frustration with the state of the Wolves was palpable, KG was as stubborn as he was competitive, and it didn't seem like the Celtics would be able to pry him away. In addition, Garnett held a ton of leverage in any trade negotiations. The big man's contract had 2 years left on it, but he had the option to opt out of the final season and hit unrestricted free agency in 2008 rather than 2009. Teams preparing to sell the farm for KG in the summer of 2007 wanted assurances this would be more than just a 1-year window. The cellar-dwelling Celtics weren't getting that assurance, but Ainge had a trick up his sleeve when draft night rolled around.
My television producer says now go to Andy Katz because Boston slot and Seattle picking. Andy, get us updated on the proposed trade.
Well, I can tell you, Mike, confirmed from both franchises that the deal has been agreed to, that Seattle will send Ray Allen to Boston for this number 5 pick, Delonte West and Wally Szczerbiak. And with this number 5 pick, the Celtics have been told to select Jeff Green of Georgetown. This has been agreed to by both franchises. Mike?
The totality of the deal saw Boston trade Szczerbiak, Delonte West, a future second-round pick, and Jeff Green, who was selected 5th overall that night, to Seattle for Allen and the rights to second-round pick Glenn Big Baby Davis. Like Garnett and Pierce, Allen was an aging yet still impactful star toiling away on a non-competitive team. The legendary marksman was coming off his 7th All-Star appearance and a career year scoring-wise, having averaged 26.4 points, 4.5 rebounds, 4.1 assists, and 1.5 steals for a 31-51 Sonics team. Weeks away from his 32nd birthday, the 11-year veteran had made the conference finals just once in his career, just as Garnett and Pierce had done. With Allen now joining Pierce in Beantown and having years left on his contract, the Celtics were immediately more attractive to Garnett, who eventually gave the Celtics a vote of confidence. On July 31st, the Celtics sent Jefferson, Green, Telfair, Ryan Gomes, Theo Ratliff, and 2 future first-rounders to Minnesota in exchange for KG, who agreed to a 3-year extension worth up to $60 million with bonuses when he could have commanded as much as $90 million.
I really didn't think that I was ever going to have to think of a different alternative when it came to playing in Minnesota or just playing a game of basketball. When draft night, when Boston traded for Ray Allen, the whole situation changed for me.
With that, the team that had just finished last place in the Eastern Conference was suddenly the NBA's championship favorite, with 3 stars perfectly balanced between a ball-dominant point forward, an off-the-ball catch-and-shoot specialist on his way to becoming the NBA's all-time three-point king, and one of the finest defensive big men in league history. The only questions surrounded the team's depth and the few young players who survived the blockbuster trades. Would then sophomore point guard Rajon Rondo and little-used center Kendrick Perkins be up to the task of starting alongside their new, larger-than-life teammates? Could a bench consisting of James Posey, Eddie House, Tony Allen, and Leon Powe really be championship caliber? Of course, we know now that, top to bottom, under the tutelage of Doc Rivers and his Ubuntu mantra, the 2007-8 Celtics answered all of those questions in the affirmative. Unlike some of the top-heavy, star-studded teams that would follow in their footsteps, the Celtics didn't have any growing pains. And if they did, you'd never know it by their performance on the court.
95, Pierce, looking, gets it in. Ray Allen for the game, knocks it down!
Boston separated itself from the pack immediately, opening the season with 8 straight wins and 29 wins in the team's first 32 games. Though their individual numbers suffered, the play of Pierce, Garnett, and Allen was everything the Celtics had dreamed of, as Boston cruised to 66 wins to finish 7 games clear of the second-place Pistons. Pierce led the team in scoring while putting together what was, at the time, his most efficient season yet, averaging 19.6 points, 5.1 rebounds, and 4.5 assists while shooting a hair under 50% from two-point range, 39% from deep, and 84% from the free throw line. Perhaps inspired by the daily presence of the ferocious Garnett, Pierce also tapped into his defensive potential like never before. KG went from being a 22-13 guy to a more modest 19-9 star, but his ability to devote almost all of his attention to the defensive end on a team with more offensive support than he had ever enjoyed led to his first and only Defensive Player of the Year campaign. Garnett anchored the NBA's top-ranked defense, a stingy and intimidating Boston D that, as of 2022, still ranks as a top 3 defense of the last 15 years. When taking into account its relation to league average, that 2007-2008 team featured Boston's best defense since Bill Russell manned the middle more than 40 years earlier. Surprisingly, they were pushed to 7 games by a frisky 8-seeded Hawks team in the first round, and then by LeBron James's Cavaliers in the East semis, but the Celtics ultimately made good on their potential. In the East Finals, Boston's Big Three essentially ended an entire era of Detroit basketball, then dispatched the Kobe Gasol Lakers in the NBA Finals.
And after a 22-year absence, the Boston Celtics are NBA champions once again. The greatest single-season turnaround in NBA history is complete. Banner number 17, soon to be raised to the rafters.
After years of frustration, Garnett, Pierce, and Allen finally had reason to celebrate, with KG in particular exercising all that pent-up emotion.
Anything's possible. Anything's possible!
Boston's Big Three would never again claim the NBA's ultimate prize, but their overall success continued for a half-decade and had a seismic effect on the league's future. Over 5 seasons together, the Pierce, Garnett, and Allen-led Celtics won a championship and made 2 NBA Finals appearances, reigniting the famed Celtics-Lakers rivalry for a new generation of fans in the process. They also made the East Finals 3 times, won 11 playoff series in 5 years, and averaged more than 56 wins per 82 games. It was that Eastern Conference dominance and a successful blueprint for how superstar partnerships could work that influenced LeBron's decision to take his talents to South Beach in the summer of 2010. With a shameful supporting cast around him, James's Cavs couldn't overcome Boston in the 2008 or 2010 playoffs, culminating in his eventual partnership with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh in Miami. That, in turn, led to epic postseason clashes that helped define the early 2010s in basketball. Allen even spurred Boston to join Miami in 2012, leading to a soured relationship with Pierce and Garnett. LeBron's 2010 decision is largely credited for ushering in the era of player empowerment, with the league's most impactful on-court superstars now more frequently and comfortably taking matters into their own hands off of it, for better or worse. But it's quite possible that decision, and everything that came as a result of it in the decade plus since, was set in motion by the union of Pierce, Garnett, and Allen 3 years earlier. With their eyes simply set on a 2008 championship and dreams of a potential dynasty, Pierce, Garnett, Allen, Ainge, and the rest of the Celtics may not have known it at the time, but they were about to push the NBA into a new era that would change the game forever.
Thanks for watching. If you liked this video and want to see more content like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button.